Amy, and I'm originally from the Derby in the East Midlands. Okay, well, I come from a very small family, and traditionally an English and Irish family, and my family are Christian, but we've never practiced the faith at all. I learnt most about Christianity at school, and I always believed in God. I always thought it made sense that the world around me had a creator, and I found school life quite difficult. I found dealing with the other kids and the teachers as well kind of gave me a really hard time for a few years. But it wasn't until I actually moved to high school that things started to improve. I was getting the support from my teachers, and I'd started to make friends and felt more kind of comfortable within myself. And at this point, like, I was more agnostic than anything else, because of course I believed in God, but in my view, from kind of my earlier childhood experiences, I didn't want to worship God because I just thought God wanted to punish us and make us suffer and make us sad. So I just didn't want anything to do with religion at all. And especially like when I started doing my GCSE in religious studies, we primarily looked at Christianity, and I found that I had so many problems with so many of the Christian doctrines, and in my heart, I just could not accept. Well, I never really came over those difficulties, really. I just struggled just interacting with the other students at my school, and dealing with the pressure as well that was put upon us to succeed. Pretty much from the age of 11 onwards, everything became about exams, and kind of the way I felt about it was, if I didn't pass this exam, then I was a failure. And every time I did well in a test, I would feel like I had some self-worth. I had no self-esteem as a young teenager. I was very self-conscious, and I was very anxious as well, because I'd suffered a lot from bullying when I was very little, and it really did impact me on how I was with other people. So I had enormous social anxiety, and kind of over the years as well, like, I quickly developed depression, and I was diagnosed with it when I was about 15 or 16. And it just got to a point where, like, I didn't really want anything to do with life. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to do my exams. I didn't have the time for it anymore. I didn't see the point of it, you know. Well, from a young age at my primary school, we were taught about Christianity, but I was at an age where I kind of just believed everything that my teacher told me. But kind of as I grew up and I started doing my GCSEs, that was the first time I was really looking at Christianity, like, with a more kind of maturer and more kind of critical academic kind of eye. And the biggest problem I had was the issue of the Trinity. Like, it just did not make sense to me that God would almost kind of split himself up into three parts. And kind of from my point of view, like, if God is supposed to be just, and if he wants people to succeed and go to heaven, then the concept of God has to be easy to understand. Any human being, no matter what age or for what country they're from, what race, whatever kind of education they have, they need to understand that concept, because if they don't understand the concept of God, then surely they cannot succeed. And, I just think if you go out and ask any person on the street, I think most people wouldn't be able to explain the Trinity, and they wouldn't be able to understand it, let alone if you had just a little 8-year-old kid and you were trying to explain it to it. So that was the biggest problem for me. And I think the issue about Jesus alayhi salam being the Son of God, he always struck me as a prophet, and from the parts of the Bible that I had read, I only started reading the Bible when I was about 18, but before that, the bits that I had read, there was nothing that was convincing me that he was more than a man. He was doing things that normal men did. He was praying, he was eating, he was drinking. You know, he just seemed like a normal man who was trying to portray a message, and I found it very difficult to see God in such a weak and, you know, just a weak human being. It didn't make sense to me at all. Well, when I was 17, I met my first boyfriend, and he was actually a Sunni Muslim. He wasn't practicing though. And I was with him for 2 years, and when I was 18 he proposed to me, and we planned on getting married when I had finished university. And he was the first introduction to Islam that I ever had, and he said to me, like, would you ever consider being a Muslim? Because he wanted his wife to be a Muslim, and he told me a few things, and I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll go and read about it. I didn't know anything about Islam. I'd heard about things like 9/11 on the news, but to me that didn't make me kind of scared or didn't make me feel any kind of hatred towards Muslims. I didn't know enough to form an opinion. So I started to read, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised at what I found, and I was actually really impressed with the simplicity of Islam and the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I turned to him and I said, yeah, I would be happy to become a Muslim. And you know, I was doing it for completely the wrong reasons. I wasn't doing it to impress Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like I should have been doing, but kind of in my younger, more naive years, I was doing it to impress him.